So we've got everything up and running. If you know how to use Vault, well, of course, you can be done and go be on your merry way. Otherwise, stick around because we're going to cover some simple workflows to help you get started with it. All right, so I'm over here in my Vault web console. This is where we're going to be doing some of the configuration. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to set up a secrets engine, because right now we can't really store anything significant. And secrets engines are what enable us to store secrets. Now, I wish I could give you a general definition for what a secret is, but unfortunately a secret is different depending upon the engine that you choose. Yeah, so so for what we're going to do, we're going to set up the key value engine. And so with that engine, when we have it set up, allows us to store key value pairs. On the other hand, you could set up something like the AWS secrets engine that'll let you give it something like an AWS user, and from those credentials generate temporary AWS users. Or you can use the database secrets engine, and for example, something like MySQL, generate temporary database credentials. So there's a lot of different things you can do, and what any particular secrets engine does is dependent upon the engine itself. Long story short, come over here and click Enable New Engine. Now, by the way, if you're like, oh, I forgot how to log back in, just remember you use the root token that was generated and that Vault credentials decrypted to get into here. And by the way, if you hard refresh your page, it is going to force you to put the token in. So here in the Enable Secrets Engine, we can see all the different options that we can choose from, and we're going to choose the KV. So I'm going to click Next. Now, if you've worked with S3 at all, then you know that S3 makes it look like there's folders, but it's object-based storage and there's not. It's all just paths, right? Well, in the Vault Key Value Secrets Engine, it's kind of the same concept. You store key value pairs at a path, and you can make that path really whatever it is that you want. So by default, they just call it KV, but since almost all of their documentation renames it to secret, we are going to do the same. So we're going to call this secret, and there's 2 versions of the KV secrets engine. Just stick with version 2. And there's some other options, but again, we're just going to keep this pretty straightforward and simple, so don't worry about looking through those right now. So I'm going to click Enable Engine. And now we can start storing secrets. So let's make a couple secrets here. We're going to make a developer path and put a secret in it. And we're going to make a database path and put a secret in that one as well. So I'm going to click Create Secret, and it's going to say, well, what path do you want this at? Well, we've already typed secret, so we don't need to put secret in again, right? So that's the kind of the confusing part with paths, especially in this console. It's not as confusing in the command line interface, but anyhow, what we're going to put in here is dev/API key. And for the value that we want to store here, for the key value pair we want to store here, we're going to put value, and this could be anything that you want it to be. And we're just going to put ABC123. Amazing, right? So save it. So again, the way that this works is in our secrets engine, at the path secret, we have created a path called dev. And in that path dev, we have created a path called API key. And at that path exists a key value pair called value that has the value of ABC123. Okay, not too bad. Let's do it again. This time we are going to create another secret, and we're going to create it at database/password. And for it, we're going to get a value of, let's see here, DEF 456. And then click Save. And there we go. Now we've stored some values. So that's great. But despite the fact that we've stored values, we probably need a way, we do need a way to get them, and getting them as the administrator, well, that's not very satisfying. You shouldn't be distributing this administrator token around anyways. So what we're going to do, and by the way, feel free to, let me hop over to my shell here. Feel free to just do what we're going to do here from your local shell, because remember, we made it so that anywhere can ping this point. So if you want to just do what I'm about to do from here, feel free. However, just for the real experience, we're going to make a very quick and temporary EC2 instance, and we're going to test it from there, just so we can get a more real experience, and so you can see how to install Vault and configure it on an EC2 instance. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to click Launch Instance. And I'm going to just stick with the Amazon Linux 2, the very top one. Make sure you have x86 selected. It doesn't really matter, but just stick with x86, so the Intel. And for the size, we're going to just stick with T2 micro. And for instance details, we're going to leave it in the default VPC. Don't worry about the sub. Really, you don't have to worry about like any of these settings. But the one to make sure that you check here is the auto assign public IP. Make sure you click enable. Even though that's on by default, just be explicit with it. If you don't have that checked, it's not going to have a public IP address, meaning you can't do anything with it. So we're going to leave that as is. We're going to leave storage as is. For tags, we'll get a tag. We'll do a capital N AME, and we'll call this Vault Client. And then we'll just go to next, configure security group. And for the security group, we'll just rename it Vault Client SG. And in here, we're going to leave this one rule, and this one rule is going to allow us to SSH into it. And we'll go to review and launch, and everything looks good. We'll launch it again. And here it's going to ask us for what key pair we want to use. And we are going to stick with that Vault Access key pair that we created for our project. So click this little bubble. It's saying, hey, yep, I know we're using this key pair. And then launch the instance. By the way, if you want to learn more about EC2, I do have an EC2 Fundamentals series up on YouTube that you can watch that'll explain pretty much everything in EC2. So let's go back to view instances, and these can take a handful of seconds to get up and running. So I'm going to just wait here until this goes from pending to running, and then we'll pick back up where we left off. All right, so it looks like my Vault client instance here that I created is up and running. It doesn't have to be with the status checks passed for you to be able to use it. But what we need to do now is click into it, grab its public IP address, and then we need to SSH into it. Now, hopefully you have you followed the EC2 key pair directions and you downloaded that key pair and added it to your SSH agent. If not, make sure you go back and check that video out. So what we need to do now is run SSH EC2 user at the IP address. And when we do this, we're going to say, yes, we do want to continue connecting. And now we're in the EC2 instance. Now, we have one massive problem, and that problem is that we do not have Vault. So first thing we need to do is install Vault. So I'm going to hop over here to the Vault website, and we're going to head over to download, the big blue button. And inside of here, there's a variety of different ways that you can download it, but we want to get to the release list. So we're going to click on download older versions of Vault, which funny enough, not only has the older versions, but also the current versions. And what we want here is we want to grab the version 1.40. So I'm going to click into 1.40, and then it's going to give us a selection of different versions of 1.40 for the different operating systems. And the one that we want is this one right here, the Linux AMD 64. And this is the one that's going to, I'm going to just copy the link address. This is the one that's going to work with the version of Amazon Linux 2 that we selected. So let me hop back over to the SSH shell here, and we're going to just use curl to download it, and we're going to download and output the curl request into vault.zip from this URL. It's going to go and grab it here at an amazing speed. There we go. And if we do a quick ls, we'll see that right there it's good to go. So let's unzip it. So we'll do the vault unzip. And if we ls, we'll see the Vault binary is right here because it works just like Terraform. They don't have a bunch of crazy tooling or anything you need. They just give you the straight binary, and we just need to move it to where we want it. So I'm going to use sudo and then move the Vault binary to user local bin. And once we do that, if we run which Vault, it'll show that it's there. If we run Vault version, we will also see that that is also ready to go. So what do we do now? Well, we know that we have a vault that exists at secrets.domain.whatever you made yours. So can we get a secret? Can we run vault kv get secret at that path, at the dev path, right? Because we know there's a secret at the dev path. And then we also know that there is a path at API key. So can we do that? No, we can't. And by default, it's looking for a Vault deployment on the local host itself, which we don't have one. So the first thing we need to do is we need to tell the Vault CLI about where it is it can talk to our Vault. And we do that by exporting an environment variable called Vault address or Vault ADDR. And we just set that to our domain. So -secrets.hatrack.app.io. And once I do that, if I do vault kv get secret dev API key, and that is what I named it, right? Yes, yeah, I did. Well, now we're going to get something different. It's going to say, hey, well, you know, it works, except you don't have a token at all, right? Because we are connected to it, and this is what anyone else who tries to ping this is going to get. Unless they are authenticated, unless they have a user, it doesn't matter. They can't do anything. So let's go make a user. So herein, as the administrator, to make a user, let's head over to access. The way that you can make users in Vault, well, there's many ways. You can use many different engines to create and manage credentials into your Vault. So if we click Enable New Method, well, we can see there's a variety of ways, and you can even use cloud providers. However, to keep things simple, we're going to just stick with good old username and password. So select that, click Next. And everything in Vault here operates on the path idea, and it's because even though we're using the CLI, you can actually use just a plain HTTP API as well, which is perfect because if you're coding an application, you know, that lets you use your different, your different request modules to make HTTP requests and manage them in real code instead of having to call to the Vault binary itself, let alone even having it installed. Anyhow, just leave this as it is with the path at user pass. Click Enable Method. And once you've enabled method, it'll take you to the configuration screen for it, and you don't actually need to do anything at all here. If you want to change options about it, well, you would come back here and change them. But let's go to View Method. And now we can start making users. So just to show you what this looks like now, if we go to Access, we see there's a new method here called User Pass. We'll click into it, and once inside of it, we will create a user. And for this user, I will give this user a username of Curious Cole. And for the password, I will make it Curious. Am I spelling it right? Yes. Password. And I'll save it. And so with that done, now a user exists. So let's hop back over. And how do you log in? Well, Vault login. So that's pretty obvious, although I guess it wouldn't be if you haven't worked with it. But again, we're not going to spend a bunch of time peeling through documentation, but just so you can see where all of that is, under docs, the methods that you can use to authenticate is under auth methods, and you'll see that all of these have their own ways that you go about doing it, right? So if we go to the username and password, you'll see that, hey, you can do it through the CLI, and here's an example of them using just CURL or curl to do the same thing, get the same thing done. Anyhow, now that we see how to do it, let's do Vault login method equals user pass, because that is the method that we used, and then we need to pass it two key value pairs of the username and the password. So username is Curious Cole, password equals Curious PWD. I think I spelled that all right. And once you do that, we will see that you're now logged in. Now you don't have to do anything else. I know that we had to use the token to get into the Vault web admin interface. Well, it's not really an admin interface, but to get into the Vault web interface. However, for this, what happens when you log in, if you do an ls-la, it stores your token in this little dot file called Vault token. And anytime from this point forward that you make a request, it just references that file. So let me clean up this output. So now that we're done, now can we get a secret at the dev API key? And no, we can't. We're not getting a 500 anymore. However, we are getting a forbidden, and it's because we are not allowed to get that. So this brings us to the idea of policies. So this is the other cool part about Vault. It's not a catch-all, you can access everything or nothing. Instead, what we can do is we can create policies that give very specific permissions. So if we click into the default policy, so this is a policy that's just created, we can see here that what can we do by default? Well, we can look up ourselves and some other things, but only with our own user. And that's not good enough. So what we need to do is we need to create a new policy that will allow people to get secrets at the path here, at the secret dev path here. So we're going to click create ACL policy, and I'm going to just call this dev policy. So there's that. And for this, the way that this looks is you type path and then the path to the actual secret itself. So in our case, it's secret dev. And then if we wanted to do just API key, we could do API key and then go and continue forward. Now I'm pausing here because we are using version 2 of the key value engine. And when you're using version 2, whatever you named the path originally, in our case, we called it secret, you have to, after it, add data and then continue on. It's because the KV1, the version 1 of the key value engine still exists, and so they needed a way to separate it, and this is how they chose to do it. Now, policies are, they are their own thing, so we're not going to really get into them. So instead, let me just type this out, and then I'll explain what's going on. So I'm going to make some curly braces here, write capabilities equal create, read, update, delete, and we will just leave it at that. Now, what this is saying, you probably understand what this is saying. It's saying, okay, we can do CRUD, right? We can do anything there. But what this is saying is it's saying any path nested under dev, this is going to be allowed. So let me go ahead and click create policy. And if we head back over, we'll see that policies are not in here. So how do we tell Vault that Curious Cole has these permissions? Well, we need to come back over to access, come into user pass, go to our user, and edit the user. And under tokens here, there is a field called generated tokens policies, and this is where we tell it about those. I wish there was a drop down here, but there's not. But we just come over here, type the name of the policy, and if you had more, you would just separate them with commas. And once you're done with that, you click save, and now that policy is attached to that user, giving them the permissions. Almost. So let's hop back over here and let's try and get that key. When I run it, we'll see that it's still 403. Well, why is that? Well, when you get a token, so when you log in, whatever policies you had for that user that were cleared for that user, that's what you have for that session of that token. And in our case, when we logged in, we only had the default policy. So if we want to get the new permissions we have, well, we just need to log in again. So it's not too bad. So I'm going to just press up a couple times to bring the command back up, press return, and now we will see that, hey, there's that dev policy. All right, so with that done, can we get the key? We can indeed get the key. And we can see the metadata about it as well as the value itself. Okay, so one more thing is, what if we wanted to list the values, right? What if we want to do a KV list and we just wanted to see all the values at dev? Well, this is also going to say, hey, this is not allowed. So just to simulate, let's do something real quick. Let's go to secrets and go into dev, and we'll just make one more secret at dev other key. And we'll give it a value of GHI 789 and save it, just so we have multiple values to list. And now we need to head back over and change our policy, because this policy is giving us the ability to create, read, update, and delete, but only at the paths beyond dev. To list the path itself, well, we actually need something different. So I'm going to click edit policy, and under here, we're going to add another rule called path, and we're going to put it secret, and you would think, so let me just type of what you think it would be. So note that I've got the path there at the end, so the little trailing slash capabilities equal list, Now, you might think that you could just add list there and it would work, but unfortunately not, because when you list, you aren't listing nested paths, you're listing right at the path itself. But the other thing here is, again, remember, data is required if you're using version 2 of the key value engine, which really you should be using. So you would want to put data here, right? Well, almost. When it comes to listing, you actually need to use metadata. And I'm mainly saying this not so much to confuse you, because it probably is confusing you, but just again to point out that, look, this is a simple workflow. This is going to let you list and list and manage secrets, because here you can create, read, update, and delete as much as you want. But anyhow, this is going to let you get those different values there. So we're going to just leave it at that. But if you want to know more about policies, you're going to need to look through the documentation, because they're not exactly something that you could explain in one sitting without this video getting longer than it already is. So with that done, let's click save. Now, we don't need to go and modify the user again, because it's pointing to this policy, so we don't need to change it. It doesn't really care about the changes. It just points to the policy, and those are the permissions. So let's hop back over here. Let's try and list again. And once we do that, we will see that it works. Now, if you're wondering like, oh, but why didn't we have to log in again? Well, we didn't have to log in again because we have the policy, right? This policy, when it checks the permissions, it just points to it. So we don't have to change it again. And we can indeed see the 2 keys here. So if we wanted to get one of the keys one more time, we can just do other key, and we'll see the value pops up there. And so just real quick, just so you see, how can we put a value? Well, we'll just do a vault kv put, and we'll put it at the same path, dev third key, and then we'll just put value equals xyz 012. And when we do that, we'll see, okay, hey, we went and made the value. If we do a list again, we'll see that now the third key is there. And if we do a get again for the third key, we'll see that we can get the value. Okay, so there is a lot to vault. Even though this is simple, this video has already gotten a little bit long. But this workflow right here, this is good to take you pretty far with just basic key value secrets, if that's what you need, right? Just one last thing on those policies. I know we just showed the wildcard, but you could change this, for example, to API key or third key or other key. If we did this, then we would only be able to perform these operations on that other key path. So with this in hand, you've got the bread and butter to start making use of key value secrets management, right? You also know how to make users and let them log in, and how to attach policies, and then also how to put secrets here as well. All right, so with that, that brings our general usage crash course to an end. There's obviously a lot more that you can do. So let's hop back over here to our EC2 instance. Now, if you were here and you wanted to log out and be done with it and leave this instance alive, there's a couple things that you should do. First up, you should get rid of that vault token. That is the same as logging out. So for example, if I come over here and I try and get that value, well, here it's going to say, hey, you don't have a token. So that's how you do that. But the second thing you should do is you should clear the history, because if we run history, well, we can see the username and password here. And so if someone did get into this instance, well, we'd be compromised. They could get those credentials. So once you're done here, also run history tag C, and that's going to get rid of the history. And then we're going to do a history tag W, which is going to write to the history file, overwrite it with the blank file. And with that done, if we do history, we'll see nothing. And then type exit to leave the EC2 instance. And the final thing to do just for cleanup is I'm going to come over to the EC2 console. I have that Vault client selected. I'm going to click on Actions and then terminate it because we no longer need it. And that will clean up that instance. Now, this ends the main deployment section. The next part's all going to be about private deployments. And because of that, we need this to be clean. We don't want all of this stuff up there. I mean, granted, you can leave it up there. And there's some techniques with Terraform workspaces or just cloning it to a different folder. But just to keep things simple, if you are planning to go along with the private deploy, the only thing you need to do to clean everything up we've made, and this is the most amazing part, there's two things you need to do. First thing is you need to come over to S3 And in S3 here, you need to go into our bucket here. And the only person that can access this is the root account user or an IAM admin user. So don't worry about this being in here. And this is all encrypted. The first thing you need to delete your credentials here. So I'm going to just delete them. Now we'll get rid of them. And the final thing you need to do is come over here and make sure you're in our project folder, so that repo folder, and then just run Terraform destroy. When you do this, it's going to grab all the things about it and just tell you all of the different resources that it's going to get rid of here. This can take a couple of minutes while it grabs the state from their state file and also makes some calls in the background to grab all of it. And here we go. It's going to show all the different things it's going to delete, right? And when you're ready, you can just type yes, and it will go through and get rid of everything for you. I'm going to type no for now, though, just because I have some other things I'm going to do with it that you won't see. But when you're ready, go ahead and do Terraform destroy before you move on if you're going to try out the private deployment.